You ask for love for so long. Then when it finally arrives, your body reacts like something is wrong. You wanted closeness. You imagined relief. But real affection can make guarded people tighten instead of melt. The text is sweet and you stare at it too long. The care is real and suddenly you need distance. Nothing bad happened. That is the confusing part. The problem begins when love stops being hypothetical. Fantasy is easy to hold. Real love gets close enough to touch your fear. That is when old protection wakes up. Being loved well asks something harder. It asks you to stop scanning. It asks you to stop preparing for impact. And if self-protection became your version of safety, that can feel dangerous. Not dramatic, just deeply unsettling. This usually starts in tiny moments. You delay replying. You dodge the compliment. You suddenly need to be alone. They hold your hand and you hold it back, but a part of you is already stepping away inside. They say they miss you. You miss them too. Still, you answer with half the warmth you actually feel. From the outside, it can look cold. From the inside, it feels overloaded, like your system hit an alarm your mind cannot explain. Sometimes people shut down because love is absent. Sometimes they shut down because love is finally available. Those are not the same thing. When love stays far away, you can control the story. You can want it without being changed by it. But when someone really shows up, your needs become visible, your hope becomes visible, your dependence becomes possible. And that is where many people freeze. Not when they are ignored, but when they are deeply considered. Maybe early closeness felt inconsistent. Maybe it came with pressure, withdrawal, confusion, or conditions you could never fully predict. So your nervous system adapted. It burned a track tone, timing, and emotional weather before you even realized you were doing it. After a while, that caution stopped feeling like caution. It started feeling like personality, like independence, like just being careful. But sometimes what looks like preference is actually protection. A life built around not needing too much from anybody. That is why healthy love can feel strange at first. It does not match the emotional map your body learned to trust. Unfamiliar does not always feel safe. Sometimes unfamiliar feels suspicious. Sometimes peace feels blank because your system was trained on intensity. So when someone is clear, kind, and emotionally available, an old question rises. What will this cost me if I let it matter? You may never say that out loud, but your body can still act like closeness is a risk to your stability. That is why reassurance can get complicated. It helps for a second. Then it creates the fear of needing even more. Because if their presence starts calming you, you become attached to that calm. And attachment means something real could someday hurt. So you get strategic without admitting it. You answer slower. You reveal less. You keep one foot near the exit. One day you feel warm and open. The next day you feel numb, restless, or weirdly irritated. Nothing changed outside, but something crossed a line inside. That sudden chill confuses everyone. Your partner thinks they did something wrong. You think maybe your feelings disappeared. But the feeling is not always truth about them. Sometimes it is truth about how much intimacy your system can handle at once. This is one reason unavailable people can feel so magnetic. They let you stay emotionally activated without fully surrendering. But give that same person a steady partner, and a different fear appears. Now there is something real to lose. Being seen sounds beautiful until it gets specific. Until someone notices your mood, until they remember your wounds, until they respond gently. That gentleness can hit harder than rejection. Rejection confirms the old story. Gentleness threatens to rewrite it. And rewrites are destabilizing. They expose defenses you barely knew you lived inside. So you start picking at the connection. Tiny flaws suddenly feel important. Small doubts start sounding wise. You tell yourself maybe the chemistry is off. Maybe the timing is wrong. Maybe you are just protecting your peace. Sometimes you are protecting something. But sometimes it is not peace. Sometimes it is the guarded self that only knows love from a distance. That is why people can miss someone and avoid them at the same time. They can crave the text and dread it. They can feel close after one vulnerable night, then panic the next morning when the closeness still feels real. They may want reassurance badly, but asking for it feels too exposed, so they stay quiet and hope the other person notices. If the other person notices, it can feel comforting and terrifying. Comforting because the need was met, terrifying because the need is now undeniable. This is where emotional confusion gets loud. You are not just feeling love, You're feeling what love wakes up. It wakes up dependence fears. It wakes up old disappointment. It wakes up the possibility that being held could actually matter. And once something matters deeply, you lose a certain illusion of control. You cannot stay untouched in the same way. For heavily guarded people, that can feel unbearable, not because they are shallow, because they finally care enough to feel vulnerable. So they become hard to read, not because they enjoy games, because they are trying to manage emotions they do not fully trust. Some withdraw after tenderness, some go quiet after a deep conversation, some turn cold right after things begin to feel stable. To the other person, it feels backwards. Shouldn't safety make love easier? Often, yes, but not always at first. Chaos gives you something to manage. Safety gives you something to feel. Feeling is harder when your whole life taught you to brace. In unstable love, you stay busy decoding. In steady love, you are left alone with your own softness. And softness can feel humiliating when you learned that needs make you weak, especially if being composed kept you safe. So even good love can trigger shame. You notice how much you care. You notice how much their reply affects you. You notice your own hope, and hope is risky. Hope means pain is no longer theoretical. That is why some people go numb when things start getting good. Numbness is not always the absence of love. Sometimes it is overload. A shutdown that says this matters too much, so I need less access right now. That is also why some people become critical when they feel closest. Little flaws suddenly feel bigger than they are. Criticism creates distance without admitting fear. It is easier to point at a problem than say, "This tenderness scares me." Then resentment grows quietly. Not because the partner is cruel, because self-protection turns ordinary closeness into silent work. Eventually they feel unseen, but sometimes being unseen is the result of hiding, not proof that love is missing. That is one of the hardest truths here. Protection can create the loneliness it was built to prevent. Distance can manufacture the emptiness it claims to manage. Still, the impulse makes sense. If closeness once led to pain, your system will not instantly trust a better outcome. Kindness alone does not erase memory. Trust is not just a belief. It is a body experience. It is the slow discovery that connection can stay without costing you yourself. So the goal is not to shame the part that pulls back. That part probably protected you when you had fewer choices. But protection has a cost when it becomes your only language. It keeps disappointment out, and real closeness out with it. The better question is not, why am I like this? The better question is, what does being loved touch in me that still expects danger? That question changes the whole story. It turns judgment into curiosity. It helps you hear the fear beneath the behavior. Sometimes the fear says, if I need them, they can hurt me. Sometimes it says, if they really know me, they may leave. Sometimes it says, if this feels good, it will not last. Those fears can stay quiet for a long time. Then one loving gesture pulls them into the room. A promise kept. A soft look. A routine that starts feeling dependable. You would think reliability would immediately soothe the wound. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it first exposes how deep the wound goes. That is why a secure partner can feel confusing. Their steadiness does not match your inner drama. Their calm leaves you with fewer places to hide. They ask what you need, and your mind goes blank. They offer reassurance, and gratitude arrives with embarrassment. They stay calm, and somehow their calm makes your chaos louder. If you do not understand the pattern, you may call this boredom. You may think the spark is gone. You may mistake unfamiliar peace for missing chemistry. But sometimes what is missing is not passion. It is adrenaline, the tension, the chase, the relief you once confused with connection. Healthy love often feels quieter, not empty, just less theatrical. And if your heart learned love through extremes, quiet can feel almost unreal. It can even feel emotionally flat at first. Sometimes it is the ache of realizing how long you have lived defended. That ache matters. It means you are noticing the armor. You are seeing how expensive constant self-protection has been. This is where change begins, not when you force yourself open, when you start catching the moment your body confuses care with risk. You notice the urge to disappear after intimacy. You notice the irritation that appears after tenderness. You notice the story that rises right when someone starts feeling important, and instead of obeying it, you pause. You ask, what just got touched in me? What felt exposed? What am I trying not to need right now? That kind of curiosity is powerful. It gives you a little space between feeling and action. And sometimes that tiny space changes everything. It becomes the difference between disappearing and saying, I feel overwhelmed, but I care. It becomes the difference between going cold and admitting, this closeness is bringing up fear I do not fully understand yet. That kind of honesty is vulnerable. It is also intimacy, maybe not polished intimacy, but real intimacy. Real intimacy lets someone see the shutdown without being shut out completely, and that matters. Not every relationship can hold that. Some people will misread your fear. Some people will take the distance personally because it does affect them. Your pattern may be understandable, but it is not harmless. Love cannot breathe well through emotional smoke. The person on the other side often feels the withdrawal before they understand it. They feel the temperature drop. And if they care, they may start blaming themselves. They may shrink their own needs just to keep you close. That is when private fear turns into shared pain. What started as self-protection begins teaching someone else to walk on glass. So the work is not only letting love in. It is learning how to stay present when love reaches the parts of you that want to run. It is learning that closeness is not captivity. Needing someone does not erase you. Being loved does not automatically put you in danger. It is learning that receiving can be harder than giving. Giving keeps you moving. Receiving makes you still enough to feel. And feeling is the whole point. That is why it scares people. Meaning gives love weight. Maybe that is what has been happening all along. Maybe you were never too distant for love. Maybe love just reached a depth your defenses were built to interrupt. Maybe the shutdown is not proof you chose the wrong person. Maybe it is proof that something old, tender, and unpracticed finally got touched. That is a very different story. The work is slow. It happens in honest texts, in pauses that do not become disappearances, in staying 1 inch closer than usual. It happens when you stop treating every surge of fear like a sign to leave. It happens when you let kindness feel awkward without punishing yourself for it. It happens when you admit that being loved well can feel vulnerable in ways pain never did. That sentence alone can soften years of confusion. Because now the pattern has a name. Not coldness. Not impossible standards. A frightened intelligence built around retreat. And once you can see it, you do not have to let it run everything. You can thank it for protecting you and still choose not to disappear. The deepest shift is not becoming fearless. It is staying honest enough to remain in the room with your fear. Love will still feel risky sometimes. Anything that matters can shake you. But being shaken is not the same as being unsafe. That distinction can save a good relationship. It can also save you from abandoning yourself the second tenderness becomes real. So if love finally came close and something in you went numb, distant, or quiet, do not only ask why you pulled away. Ask what part of you got scared of being reached. The answer may be sadder than you expected. It may also be kinder, and kinder answers are often the ones that let people change. Because some people do not shut down when love arrives because they do not care. They shut down because for the first time, they finally do.